It started with a simple message. One emoji, no context, no punchline, no follow-up. But that night, when Amal Clooney glanced at her husband's phone, she paused. The name on the screen was Blake. The emoji, a single flame. No words. No explanation. To be clear, this wasn't some tabloid scandal. No cheating rumors, no hidden cameras. But what happened next quietly shifted the dynamics at home. Dinners grew cold. Meetings lost their rhythm. And one subtle absence from a UN event photo wasn't about infidelity. It was about power. The woman trying to borrow it, even momentarily, was branding herself with it. Amal eventually realized this wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern. And once she began pulling at the threads, everything Blake had built started to unravel. At first, Amal dismissed it. A flame emoji. Maybe nothing. Maybe a joke. Maybe just Blake being Blake. But that same week, Vogue published a fashion piece, Hollywood's Power Wife. Blake Lively steps onto the global stage. The article included a quote from Blake's PR team, stating her next chapter would focus on real-world issues, human rights, international law, legacy building. Sound familiar? Because that was Amal's lane. Her voice. Her life's work. And suddenly, Blake was mimicking it, just loud enough to drown Amal out. Wait, why was Blake Lively speaking about humanitarian law in Vogue? Had she been cast in a biopic? Then came the red carpet at an international peace summit, where Amal was scheduled to keynote. Blake, not on the original guest list, somehow appeared front row, dressed in a white cape gown nearly identical to the one Amal had worn at the same summit a year prior. When asked about her presence, Blake smiled and said, "I believe in standing beside women who actually change things." She didn't mention Amal, and she didn't need to. For the next 48 hours, headlines weren't about the work. They were about her look. And remember, every deleted tweet, every fake statement, every PR cover-up takes hours to piece together. This all began at a quiet dinner in London, hosted by a high-ranking diplomat's wife. 12 guests. No press. Just conversation. Amal had attended this dinner every year before. But this time, her name wasn't on the list. The hostess reached out the next day, confused. "I thought you were out of town." Blake had told her Amal pulled out. But Amal hadn't. She never declined. She never even knew it was happening. And guess who sat 2 seats away from George Clooney? Blake. Same table. Same smile. Same dress code Amal had helped standardize years ago. She didn't just take Amal's place. She replaced her entirely. How is Blake Lively now in rooms with diplomats, lawyers, and human rights advocates, as if she belonged there? It's as though she starred in a few thrillers and believes she is Amal. That night, Amal didn't confront anyone. She didn't call the hostess. She didn't text Blake. But she did something else. She unfollowed 3 people connected to the event. When Vanity Fair asked her 2 weeks later if the industry blurred the line between activism and performance, she said only, "Some women do the work, some perform it." No names were mentioned. She didn't need to point. 3 months passed. No public drama. No confrontation. No Instagram stories. No viral headlines. Just quiet observation. But behind the scenes, Amal had seen enough to recognize a trend. Blake wasn't just showing up. She was strategically stepping into roles, rooms, and narratives that belonged to someone else. It was subtle, calculated, and unmistakably deliberate. What began as a single flame emoji had ignited a chain reaction, revealing not betrayal in the usual sense, but a quiet, methodical assertion of power, an attempt to claim spaces that weren't originally hers. For months, it was never headlines, just whispers, private lunches, subtle mentions of Amal Clooney's name, as if people were testing the waters. And then came the call. A private women's roundtable hosted by a global legal consortium, one Amal had helped launch back in 2021. A junior staffer called Amal's office to confirm her schedule, confused by the sudden shift. The keynote speech was no longer hers. Instead, it was being pitched by Blake Lively's representative. Not Amal, not a human rights expert, not even a lawyer, a celebrity publicist. They insisted Blake was more audience-facing. They claimed she could bridge the gap between policy and popular culture, behind closed doors, Amal's team made a pragmatic choice. Let Blake speak. Let her try. Sometimes, the best way to see a performer fail is to hand them a live microphone. And fail she did. Blake Lively gave a 6-minute speech on due process and international conflict resolution that sounded like she had Googled it mid-flight. Headlines followed, but not for inspiration. A mispronounced acronym, a misquoted line, a generic remark about having empathy for everyone, both sides. One delegate allegedly turned to a colleague and whispered, "She sounds like a TikTok therapist." The video racked up 2 million views in just 24 hours, not because it moved anyone, but because it exposed how far the illusion had gone. Blake wasn't stepping into activism. She was borrowing a costume that didn't fit. Backstage, after awkward applause and dozens of forced compliments, Blake spoke louder than she realized. "I just think Amal's whole brand is built on silence. It's elegant, but not very effective," she said. And those words found their way to Amal, not via gossip, but through the event's internal transcript flagged by a meticulous staffer. Amal did nothing public. She forwarded it to a trusted friend, a journalist. Within a week, a profile appeared in The Atlantic, not about Blake, not about the event. It was titled "Weaponized Elegance: How Silence Can Still Shatter a Room." Amal wasn't mentioned, but one line hit like a spotlight. "When you mistake poise for passivity, you're not underestimating the woman. You're exposing yourself." From that moment, Blake's access started to vanish. Speaking invitations were postponed. Sponsorships were reconsidered. A high-profile summit even released a statement. "We believe in advocacy, not appropriation." No names, no direct accusations, just a cultural reset in motion. Meanwhile, Amal remained quiet in public. Yet her influence reemerged. Old interviews resurfaced. Past speeches were reshared. One clip went viral with a single, pointed caption: "There's real work and there's rehearsal." Proof isn't always necessary in this city. Sometimes, one person in the right room is enough to shift the tide. Blake's name, once synonymous with glamour and influence, began to fade from rooms she had recently dominated. Invitations shrank. Media coverage turned skeptical. Amal, by contrast, remained untouchable. Her reputation wasn't just intact, it had grown stronger. And the lesson was clear. In a town of bright lights and loud voices, elegance and restraint are still the sharpest forms of power. And that's exactly what happened. A private memo flagged as confidential circulated quietly among staff at a humanitarian legal summit Amal Clooney had spoken at just months earlier. An anonymous tip reached a journalist. The message: "Check who sent the Morocco footage to the Daily Mail." It didn't come from inside Amal's team. That footage, the emotional clip of Amal helping a refugee child to safety in a no-camera zone, somehow leaked, went viral, and was spun with the headline, "Amal Clooney's hero moment staged." For months, it had been just a shadow, a quiet question. But whispers grew louder. What if Amal hadn't leaked it? What if someone deliberately made it look like she did? When the journalist ran a metadata trace, the source wasn't a legal team member, not a camera crew, but someone linked to a brand PR firm partnered with Blake Lively. People forget metadata exists. That refugee clip wasn't leaked by Amal's team. It was routed through a third-party PR account tied to a Lively Cosmetics rollout that week. No one accused Blake publicly, not Amal, not the media. When asked if she wanted to issue a denial, Amal declined. Her team said simply, "We don't correct projections. We just outlast them." The next day, Blake's brand launch quietly disappeared from Sephora's homepage. No press release, no statement, nothing. Just gone. Then came the photo. Not a red carpet shot, no filters, no glitz. Amal standing alone at a UN event in Geneva. No glam squad, no makeup, no husband. She wore a black suit, holding a folded document in one hand and, in the other, Blake Lively's brand PR packet. Folded, crushed, unmistakable logo visible in the zoomed-in shot. She didn't throw it, didn't say a word, but the body language, the folded paper, the press badge around her neck, it was a mic drop. By the time the photo went viral, the caption was already written, "She knows." "She's not playing anymore." Comment sections exploded. The photo was Amal's subtle press side takedown of Blake. She brought receipts. Literally. She folded that packet like it was trash. And for once, Blake's team had no response, no denial, no publicist spin, no carefully worded Instagram story, just a 72-hour silence. Eventually, Blake's team quietly removed the PR firm involved in the brand launch from her website. Deleted comments on archived fan posts read, "She knew exactly what she was doing." She just didn't expect Amal to stay that calm. Meanwhile, Blake had been invited, or more likely invited herself, to speak at an exclusive panel titled Power and Poise, Redefining the Female Public Voice, a private media summit in London. Closed room, high profile, women only, curated seats. And guess who was listed as the final panelist? Amal Clooney. They weren't seated together. Blake arrived early, soft pink dress, PR smile, notes in hand. Amal arrived late, wearing black, no makeup, commanding presence. The contrast was striking. Blake came prepared, rehearsed, performing the part. Amal didn't need notes. She simply existed in the space. The juxtaposition was noticed by everyone in the room. Amal's calm, understated elegance highlighted Blake's overpreparedness. One whispered observation later made it online. Some women do the work. Some perform in a world obsessed with optics. Amal Clooney's silence, patience, and subtle actions spoke louder than any viral video or headline. She didn't have to fight publicly. She didn't have to scream. Every move was deliberate, measured, and devastatingly effective. And in that quiet, calculated way, Blake Lively's performance, a mix of ambition, PR polish, and borrowed gravitas, was slowly unraveling. The takeaway was clear. In the battle between presence and performance, true poise always wins. And Amal, as always, remained untouchable. The document didn't name Blake or Amal, but everyone connected the dots. A woman, let's call her Miss L, was being coached to copy Amal's speeches, posture, branding, even her quotes. When that email thread surfaced instructing Blake to mimic Amal's UN quote word for word, the reaction was immediate. She wasn't just chasing clout. She was blueprint stealing. Someone dug up Amal's original Geneva UN quote and paired it with a clip of Blake repeating the exact same words in a Glamour UK interview. Word for word. Amal had delivered her lines in a speech about displaced women. Blake said them while discussing being a misunderstood actress. The industry noticed. Quiet resistance isn't silence. It's strategy disguised as stillness. Amal declined to comment initially, but 2 days later, at a lecture in Colombia, she opened with, "I'm often asked if imitation is flattery. I think sometimes it's desperation disguised as admiration." She didn't smile. She didn't explain. She just turned the page and continued reading. The internet exploded. By April, there was nothing left to expose. Amal didn't need to tweet, post, or publicly clap back. The industry was already adjusting internally. Campaign directors rewrote language to avoid overlap with Miss L's positioning. Notes circulated. Too derivative. If Clooney is attached, do not pursue alternatives unless cleared by legal. Translation: if Amal was involved, Blake was off the list. And then George Clooney, Amal's husband and global partner, spoke. It wasn't dramatic or loud. At a Skull Foundation industry Q&A, someone asked, "Do you think influence can be borrowed?" He paused, smiled, and said, "It depends." Borrowed from who? If it's my wife, good luck surviving the interest rate. The room laughed. Amal didn't. She simply looked up, blinked once, and smiled like she knew something the rest of the world didn't. That clip trended in 5 countries. The consequences were swift. A major post-scandal comeback campaign for Blake quietly disappeared. No press release, no explanation, just a note from a Vogue Studios rep. No longer in development. The project, a human rights storytelling campaign focused on women's voices, was originally built with Amal. The industry collectively pivoted, recognizing the gap between authentic work and borrowed performance. That's how this story ends. Not with a headline or a viral tweet. Not with public drama or a confrontation. Amal didn't need to escalate, and Blake couldn't compete. Influence isn't borrowed lightly, and in this silent, strategic game, One woman simply outlasted the other. The lesson was clear: presence, authenticity, and patience always overshadow imitation. Blake realized too late that she hadn't just crossed a woman, she had crossed a wall. She didn't confront it, she became it. There was no slam, no outburst, just an eerie quiet that filled the room. It didn't end with a scandal, a lawsuit, or a press tour. There was no apology. There was nothing. No statement from Blake. No response from Amal. Just silence. The kind of silence that hits when the story has already been written without you. Blake Lively had chosen the wrong game, the wrong opponent, and the wrong arena. This wasn't Hollywood. This was the realm of real power. Power that doesn't perform, doesn't tweet, doesn't respond, because it never needs to. Amal never mentioned the flirty emoji. She never brought up the campaign Blake had mimicked. She didn't recount the 2:47 a.m. message Blake sent George, just a photo, no words. Women like Amal don't broadcast these moments. They ensure those stories never get repeated. The final blow came via a leaked agency memo from the European Law Foundation that had backed Blake's global storytelling initiative. Blake was blacklisted from all upcoming ethics-based campaigns. One line summed it up: brand identity compromised. Recommend disassociation. By April, 3 of Blake's projects vanished. Her Vogue cover pulled, her documentary cameo replaced, her planned campaigns quietly canceled. Amal didn't win a fight. She eliminated the need for one. When you make the room too dignified for someone to return, no confrontation is necessary. Blake had tried to step into Amal's world and forgotten that it wasn't a stage. This wasn't a feud. It wasn't drama. It was a warning. And for once, Blake Lively heard it clearly. When the person you're mimicking has dismantled regimes and commanded global influence, maybe don't copy her slogans or expect to walk away unscathed.